Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the weekly SkillBridge RE meeting. So if you're in a safe situation, ask that you turn your video on. And then if you want to chime in with anything, you're more than welcome to unmute yourself, or you can drop some questions or comments in the chat box. Just a couple general announcements. If you're licensed or you've passed the test and you're in the process of getting onboarded, please send me a friend request so I can add you to the Fast Forward Movement Facebook group, which is a private Facebook group. And you can't even find it if you search for it. You have to be invited by somebody that's in the group, like a little secret society for agents. And then there's also the Honey Badgers, which I'll also add you to. And you have to be, same thing, you have to be invited by somebody to be added to that group. So again, if you're beyond the test and you're in the process of getting your license activated and or already licensed, please send me a friend request and I'll add you to those groups. Tons of great resources for those of you who have attended one of the Monday morning masterminds or any of those other really motivated meetings that are put on by the Fast Forward Movement. It's a great resource of information for staying current on what all the top agents in the country are doing to stay at the head of the game. And another general announcement, wanted to congratulate our most recent exam passee, Carlos Quintana. So he's over in California. So Carlos, if you don't mind, can you give us some words of wisdom about your test prep and then also the process that you're in right now about getting your license activated, lessons learned, things you did that paid off, and things that you wish you would have done before?
Yeah, of course. Thank you for the acknowledgement and the congratulations, Zor. To everyone. So yeah, what I used to prep myself was Prep Agent. Helped me out a crazy ton. And I just did nonstop practice tests like every single day. And I started off with master tests, bombed them completely, and I was like, that's definitely not the way to go. So best way that I found was to break it up in chunks. And on the DRE website, they actually tell you the average percentage of questions on each subject that are on the exam. So the ones that made up the majority of it, so like I believe it was real estate practices made up like 25% of the test. That's what I focused on the most. And just went down the list and just kept doing practice exams until I got 80%. And then I moved on to the next subject all the way until I was pretty confident on all of them. Just did master exams, all that. And the biggest thing is vocab. There's tons of vocab. So I'd get like pretty confident with that. Um, on Prep Agent, they have vocab quizzes as well. And if you are interested in Prep Agent, you could just ask anyone. They could send you like a referral link, and it'll be like 25 or 30% off. So there's definitely resources out there to not have to pay the whole thing, but it's definitely worth getting. Um, One of the biggest things that are overlooked for the exam is your health. I think everyone that I've talked to taking the exam says that that's one of the big parts, and definitely with me, like a good night's rest, make sure you're eating well a few days prior, that you're calm and collected. I meditated like the few days before leading up to the test, and then the morning of, I didn't even review anything. I didn't listen to any vocab, any podcast, nothing about real estate. That whole morning was just getting the test out of my mind and relaxing my brain. So when I go in, I'm cool, I'm calm, I'm collected, and I can be confident the whole way. So that's what I would recommend for anyone. Um, as well as for my license, unfortunately, this morning I found out that my live scan fingerprints were not properly, the paperwork was not properly filled out by the company doing them. So even though I passed my exam and I'm ready to get licensed, my license is on hold because of that. So anything to do with documents, ensure that on your end it is done exactly the way the DRE wants it, and even double check if you're able to. Anything else that like any third party is doing for you, make sure that it's done properly, because now I gotta wait probably another few weeks until I get my license. So those are my tips. If anyone wants to send me a DM and talk more, I would be more than open to that. And if you're in California, LA specifically, yeah, let's get in touch and we could definitely work off each other.
Thanks a lot, Carlos. It's a lot of valuable information. And one thing I wanted to touch on with what you talked about was like the unforeseen. So those the people that filled out your paperwork incorrectly, and so people that are out there here in the Skill Bridge RE program that are kind of delaying taking the exam and getting the process started. There's those unforeseen things like that that are going to slow you down even more from getting your license. So if you're at all procrastinating in getting that exam knocked out, whether it's because of the fear of the exam or whatever it is, there's going to be those unforeseen things that will pop up that if you go ahead and put the pedal to the metal and get the test knocked out, even if you don't feel 110% ready for it, you'll move closer to those obstacles that are going to come your way. Um, but that's actually the topic we're going to be talking about today is just a round table for test prep. I'm going to talk about a couple things that helped me, which was similar to what worked for Carlos, and then anyone that's already passed the test or prepping for the test, things that you guys are doing that will help others in the audience prepare for the exam. Because I know I'm not the best test taker. My buddy Matt Haskins, that's somewhere in the crowd. He We were in flight school at the same time, and I struggled through the exams that we had to take. And I got a degree in mechanical engineering, and the test that I did the worst on in flight school was the one about engines, and I took like three like semester long courses on engines, but just because of the like test anxiety, all that stuff, that caused me to answer questions on the exams in really dumb ways because I just was just overhyping it, overthinking it, and like what Carlos said, like meditating, having a clear mind, and just relaxing and like realizing you're not going to die. Like even if you fail the exam, you're not going to die. So it's not that big of a deal if you don't pass the first time. And I was fortunate enough to pass it by 1 point. Almost didn't pass the first time, but that was I did put a lot of work into preparing for that. Um, and so that being said, the preparation that I did to prepare for the exam, I would say the biggest, if I had to give you just one thing to do or one subscription to sign up for, or whatever, I would say so the link that I just dropped in the chat box, PSI practice tests. When I signed up for it, I signed up for the $50 90-day package, and it had 500 questions. They now offer a lot more different packages, as you'll see in that link. So they have like up to 1,000 question sample. Um, yeah, and they have it for both brokers and salesperson. As far as I know, the broker version of the test is just you have to score higher than the salesperson. Salesperson, you have to get at least 80% for broker. I think it's like 90 or something. But yeah, that's that product alone right there. Like if you had no ability to get a pre-licensing course or anything like that, and you only had to do one thing to prepare for the exam, that would be my personal recommendation. And so all I did was sign up for that, and you can take unlimited practice tests. And the reason that I felt like reassured by this particular platform was because the test was given by this same company, PSI. And that's for Hawaii. Might be different for wherever you're taking your exam, and there might be a different company that has the same type of thing for your area. And I would recommend signing up for that. And so what I did, they have a test version, and then they have a practice version. In the practice version, you go through the test, and after every question, it tells you if you got it right or wrong, and it gives you an explanation of why you got it right or why you got it wrong. And so as you're going along, you're kind of getting a warm and fuzzy of how you're doing. And the first time you go through, it'll take a solid 4 hours to take like this 60 question practice test. So if it if you're signed up for this and you have that same experience, just know that you're doing just fine. But the second time, it took me like 3.5 hours, and the third time, 3 hours, and then after like the 10th time, I was crushing them in like 45 minutes, and I started making a game out of it and making or having fun with it, and I would just keep track of how long it would take me and on my score. And so I got it down to where I could, in 45 minutes, I could get a passing score of like 83% or 85%. Um, and so some of the stuff that went along there, to get to that point was another thing that Carlos mentioned, the vocabulary. Some of the exam questions, there was it was just I had no idea what they were talking about because the terms that they were using I was familiar with, but not in the context, not in the definition that they were using in that question. So I had to do a lot of Googling of words to find the definition and the origin of those words. Um, and like the example I always use is fee. So when you hear the word fee, you think, well, that's something you pay to do something or to buy something. Um, but in real estate, fee is like your ownership in something or your entitlement to something. And so if someone says you can purchase the fee for this leasehold property, that means you can buy the ownership of that property and convert it from being owned by the government or by some kind of entity to um, purchasing it and taking full ownership of it. And then, so that's like if I had to only give you one piece of advice, that's my recommendation right there. The other item I was going to recommend was, yeah, prep agent. And then if you just Google real estate practice exam, there's a ton of different versions that are out there. On Quizlet, on or all these different practice test platforms. Monkey, I forget what the name of that website was, but um, tons of stuff out there that's free, and then there's also paid stuff. If you the paid stuff is probably more heavily scrutinized for being accurate. Just keep that in mind. So if you see some free Quizlet exam, it may or may not have accurate information because the person that's making it is just a regular person, not working for a company, not being checked. And looking in the chat box, seeing a few comments. Chase said, "Is there any other recommended study platforms such as Prep Agent that you would recommend?" So yeah, PSI I would recommend the CE shop. It's both a pre-licensing course and they also have test prep items on there as well. Um, Another little tool that I would recommend is the there's tons of different PDF readers out there. There's free versions, there's paid versions that range from $5 to $25. And so when I was preparing, I used it's called Voice Dream. And so you can upload any PDF. You can even take a picture of a document and it'll convert it to whatever format it's called for where it'll actually read it. And so with the national and the Hawaii state books, I uploaded those into there, and I would listen to them while I was working out. I would listen to them while I was reading it on my phone, and because the cool thing about it is you can crank up the speed, and so I get really easily distracted. And so if I was just reading the book without listening to it, I would start spacing out like every two sentences, and then it'd take me an hour to do a page of reading. And so if you do it with that um, voice in the voice stream app or with any PDF reader, you have it playing in your ear and you're looking at it with your eyes. So you're receiving that information from multiple senses. And so you're going to take in a lot more. And it's also going to, if it's a little bit faster paced, you're like your mind is more focused on what you're doing right there instead of like thinking about what you're going to eat for lunch or something like that. Um, and then the last thing I was going to say is yeah, just talking with people about material on the exam because you'll like everybody in here, you all have different perspectives, different ways of understanding things, and so setting up a Zoom meeting or setting up a phone call, whatever, and talking about questions that you guys have, it's going to give you a much better understanding of the material, and the person that you're talking with will be able to explain it to you in a way that'll stick. If they say something kind of strange, it'll stand out in your mind, and it'll help you to understand that material. And then just looking at the rest of the stuff in the chat box, Austin Francisco said he recommends Retrainer SCA or Retrainers California for California. I portrayed prep agent and personally the practice exams weren't close to what was on the exam. So again, area by area, prep agent may or may not be good. Same thing for PSI. PSI is great for Hawaii and probably a few other states where they actually administer the test, but might not be so good for other ones. Uh, Mr. Simon said combination of YouTube, the book, and local school. Yeah, YouTube is a great resource, and that's another tool you can use while you're working out and doing other things. So you're just like constantly taking in the information. Um, YouTube is also kind of similar to having a conversation with somebody because you're hearing somebody's perspective on how to understand these things, and it's a visual learning as well as audio. Um, Carlos said a lot of these paid platforms also have free practice exams on YouTube. Yep. Yeah, so there's a lot of YouTube videos where it's like question by question, talking through the exam and what the correct answer is and whatnot. Um, so yeah, definitely recommend going that route as well. Any other comments, questions, contributions from anyone that stuff that we didn't mention here or techniques, tools that you use to prep for the exam or are currently using?
I'll say something.
Thank you, Adina.
Um, so I went through CE shop, and at the end of CE shop, they'll give you like the study sheets. And so I'm not like a big studier as far as like flashcards, and even the practice quizzes and tests aren't really my thing. So I just printed off the sheets and read through. So like I'm a reader, so I just read through everything. Um, and then, I would like take notes on the side of the paper or circle things just to like highlight it for myself, and then read through those notes a few times. So it's just, it goes by section. Oh, you can see. Just kidding. It's blurry, sorry. So it goes by section, and again, it does tell you, like Carlos mentioned, this section has 13 questions on the test. So I know that, okay, this section has 2 questions and the other section has 13. I'm gonna pay more attention to the 13 section, 13 question section. But so it breaks it down like that, and that's how I was able to kind of study. I got my Hawaii license. Tomorrow I actually test for my Virginia license, so we'll see if it actually works out a second time. But yeah, that's what I do.
Thank you, Adina. Yeah, it's really helpful because as you're processing the information and putting down in notes, you're also it's another like sense or another way of um, putting that information into your brain because you're writing it out and using different parts of your brain to do that. So that's great. And then obviously reviewing it will put it in your brain even stronger.
I'd read it
But
out loud sometimes, just like, I don't know, it's like reading it, then saying it, then writing it and stuff that kind of just helped me retain it.
Yeah, it definitely makes a difference reading it out loud as well.
and I think she brings up a important part is that you got to know what your style is. If you are a reader, if you are someone who's audio visual, you got to kind of figure out what your style is and utilize that. That will probably reap you the most results as well.
Yeah, exactly. If you're not a um, somebody that can listen to information, you're not an auditory learner, then maybe you shouldn't do what I was recommending of listening to the audiobook because you might just be spacing out the entire time and spend 4 hours listening to the whole book, and then you're like, gosh dang it, that was some terrible advice. So yeah, definitely figure out what works for you. And that's why it's good to, because at the end of the day, you're going to take a test no matter what. So whether you agree with taking practice tests or not, you're training for the test. And so um, as you're trying the different techniques, a way to figure out if what your learning type is, do the preparation, reading, listening, whatever it is, watching, take a test. And these test subscriptions, the one that I signed up for was 90 days, which is more than enough time. But yeah, prepare, take a test, see how you do. Prepare some more, take a test. And you're going to learn pretty quickly if you're actually retaining that information or not, and then figure out what technique is best for your learning.
I'd
And
also
then
mention, like, oh, you could go ahead.
you go ahead.
Oh, Zohar has mentioned it several times too, that just sign up for the test, the actual exam, because sometimes you just get a little too in your head about it, and you will be surprised with how well you do sometimes. And even if you don't do well, at least now those, pre-exam jitters are away, and now you know, okay, what do I need to study and focus on? And then
Thank you, Dina. Yeah, because and a lot of it I think comes from the pressure that's in our minds from being in the military. And so like if I failed out of flight school, that would like be a lot of pressure on me. That'd be, and so that fear or whatever type of school you go to, whatever type of training event you're at in the military, like all the just that dread of like, oh crap, if I fail out of this training event and I got to get sent back to my unit, and everyone's gonna be talking smack, saying that I'm garbage, and my command is gonna give me a bad report, all that stuff, like all that pressure we put on ourselves, and like it's still you're not thinking about it, but it's still there, and you're like, oh my gosh, if I don't pass this real estate exam, oh my gosh, like you're thinking like something bad is really bad is going to happen, but when you stop and think about it and take some deep breaths and really think through what that's going to look like, it's like, all right, so I'm paying like $60 for this exam. If I fail, it's going to suck a little bit because I don't want to pay another $60 to take this dumb exam, but nobody cares. Nobody's going to be like, hey, you failed your exam. We're going to fine you. We're going to punish you. You're going to be sitting duty for the next 6 months. None of that's going to happen. You can just forget about it, take some deep breathers, get over that you didn't pass the exam, and take it again. And that first time you go through it and don't pass, you're going to learn. You're going to be like, holy crap, I had no idea about this question that they asked, but I remember seeing it somewhere in the book. So I'm going to focus more time on that area. Or you might be the opposite end. I did really good on this area, so I can, not spend so much time brushing up on that stuff because I crushed it, and I can focus on this other weak point. Or might just be I did I knew everything that was on there, but I was just overthinking it and answered the questions incorrectly because I was like overanalyzing and changing answers. So next time I just need to relax. I just need to take a breather. I could probably take the exam again the very next day, but I just need to get a good night's rest, not be cramming down to the last minute, just relax, meditate, and then pass it the very next day. Anybody have saved rounds on test prep, advice, lessons learned? All right. We have couple more minutes. I'll just talk through a couple of things that's going on right now for me. And some questions might come up from the audience. So we have two deals in escrow right now, and they're assumptions. And both of them are with the same loan servicer. So I'm sure a lot of you have heard about like loan assumption options that are out there. Sounds amazing when you first hear about it because you're like, oh, I can just take over my friend's 2.25% interest rate loan, and it's like I'm back in 2020 again. That's really it's really not the case. And if you think about it, you're probably better off getting a new loan. But there are certain situations where it does make sense, but for the most part, the people that have those super low interest rates, so the price point out here on average like 700 to a million. And so if they bought their house in 2020, so that's now 4 years of equity, and they got it at super low interest rate. Let's say they bought it at 700, or like the condo that we live in that we bought in March 2020, we bought it for 850, and our balance on the mortgage is now 711, but it's now worth $1,050,000. So somebody would have to bring $340,000 cash, preferably, or they would have to take a second mortgage, which further complicates the situation. And so they'd have to bring all that money in order to make up the difference between the loan balance, because we have a 2.99% interest rate. So they would have to bring that money to make up the difference between the loan balance and the purchase price. And so people don't realize that, and they just hear a loan assumption. They might maybe see like a YouTube video about it, and they're like, that's all I'm going to do. I'm only going to buy a house if I can do a loan assumption, and then end up renting, and they throw all their money down the drain for 3-4 years or longer. So that's what we have going on right now. Some pointers for you guys if you ever are representing buyers or sellers with that process. The best piece of advice I can give you is squeaky wheel gets the grease. So the loan servicer, there's no incentive for them to do a good job, to be efficient, to be in communication on a regular basis. The loan servicer, but when I say loan servicer, it's the big bank. So a good experience we had with the loan assumption back in December was with Penny Mac, and because they've probably done the most loan assumptions out of all the banks out there. And so that one we were quoted 60 days for the full process, and it was like right at 60 days when we closed. But the key is just bugging them every single day. So every day, call them. Hey, what's the status of this? Do you have everything you need? Is there anything we can do to speed up the process? And you're going to get to the point where you're getting the same people on the line, even though it's like a pretty big call center, and you just want to keep a level head. I tried to keep a level head most of the time, but there was one particular guy that was not very friendly. Like I was being as friendly as I possibly could to this guy, and he was basically like, "Why are you calling? We'd have nothing for you." But that didn't stop me from continuing to call, and got that transaction closed in 60 days, which is a pretty quick timeline if you've heard of how long assumptions can take. I've seen people post on Facebook about some of their assumptions taking anywhere from 150 days to a full year. So just keep that in mind if you're considering doing that, or if you have clients that are considering doing that. So yeah, squeaky wheel gets the grease. Definitely reach out like every day to the loan servicer. Some other deals we have going on. We are about to, Lord willing, open up escrow today. A good friend of mine from college, they're moving out here, and been doing a ton of video showings for them because they're doing sight unseen. So random piece of advice with that. I don't have it right next to me, but I have a little gyro stick that keeps the video nice and smooth when I'm doing showings for them. I recommend getting one of those. You can get one for like $70 on Amazon if you get the Chinese version. It's called Feiyutech, Feiyutech. And yeah, you put your phone on there and it's stabilized, so it looks really professional, really smooth. I would also recommend getting a little mic that you can put on your shirt, and then you plug it into your phone while it's on the gyro. And then that makes your sound quality a lot better, especially if you're showing them the outside and there's a strong breeze. You want to have a bunch of that noise in the mic from the wind blowing by. But yeah, so I've done a ton of showings with them, made a couple offers, didn't get accepted. One of the offers didn't get accepted just because they were sight unseen. Which is understandable. The sellers don't want to sell their home to somebody who's going to cancel halfway through because they're like, "Oh, I thought this house was much better than I thought, but I haven't seen it in person, so I didn't realize it, and so I'm going to cancel." And so one of the times, one of the offers that they made got passed up because of that. But words of wisdom for this particular scenario. So it's really easy to get in like your routine of like, I look on the MLS, I ask around within my network, or whatever it is. Like you just go through that same cycle to find properties for your clients, or to sell properties for your clients. And so I just happened to, for a separate transaction, I reached out to one of my old teammates, who's with a different brokerage now, and I was asking her for the association documents for a property that she has sold with another agent, because that same association is where a client of mine is going to be selling his property, and I just needed to get some information from those documents and not pay the $600 for the association documents. So I reached out to her to ask her for that. She was happy to help. And then we were just catching up, and she was like, "Oh yeah, have you seen my listings and so on and so forth?" And I was clicking through and was like, "Oh, this actually looks great for clients that I'm shopping around with right now." And sent it over to them. They loved it. I booked it over there to get a video showing for them. And again, Lord willing, we'll be opening escrow today. So it's really easy to like or at the MLS is the only place I look for properties, or maybe your bubble's a little bigger and you're looking on Facebook Marketplace because listings are on there, and all these different realtor pages where people post listings. But you want to like ask yourself, and I've been telling my wife we need to put things on the wall, reminders to ourselves, of like what else, or like how can I make this more efficient, or how can I do this better, or what's next? Because it's easy to kind of just get in your routine and forget about all the other options, different ways of doing things that are out there. But that's enough of my rambling. We're at the half point of the hour. So if you want to stick around and ask a question, I'll stick around for a few more minutes. Otherwise, hope you have a wonderful day. Aloha.